Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today, as requested by you guys, I am going to do my Inktober prompt and I have filmed it for you. I have cheated slightly, I did do it last night because filming and editing and stuff, but anyway that's beside the point. So I deliberately picked today's prompt because the prompt itself is pattern. And I don't like patterns. I don't like colouring mandalas, I don't like drawing them, and I don't like drawing architecture and buildings and things because of that repetitive process. So I thought it would be a really good way to challenge myself and try and produce something without getting really bored and giving up and, you know, try and make a good job of it. So just before we get to top down view, the supplies that I'm using for this are Pigma Micron, which is one of my sort of staples in my art arsenal. I have got a water brush with a fine tip on it, and this is the Kuretake H2O, which I really like those. I'm also using the Winsor & Newton metallic inks, so I have gold and silver. And last but not least, and this has been a lifesaver so far for Inktober, I'm using this little Derwent Travel Ink Tense set. And you'll be able to see it in more detail when you actually get to the meat of the video. So those are the supplies that I'm using. We're a third of the way through. I hope you all are getting on well with your Inktober. Let's get going. The first thing that's unusual about this drawing for me is the use of a ruler. It's something that I try not to do if I can help it, and I've always sort of been an advocate for drawing lines freehand to sort of train your hand and train your muscle memory. For this particular picture though, I felt it was definitely appropriate. So I'm starting here just by, I'm really using the ruler to mark out guidelines more than anything else. And I was kind of fighting the urge the whole time to just put that ruler away and just go for it and use my little hands instead, which is always my preference. But I did persevere and kept on with the ruler because I knew if I didn't, this was going to look really sort of skew with and a bit off centre, and my skills aren't that good at drawing straight lines freehand. So I wanted to add in a little bit of detail in pencil, and you can see there I disposed of the ruler momentarily and then just started inking it out with my Pigma Micron fine liner. I do use other fine liners here which I forgot to mention in the intro, but I'll talk about them as I go along. So to give it that still sort of hand-drawn feel, I decided to do this panel at the bottom freehand, and it's just to give it a little bit of character because really clean, crisp lines obviously aren't my thing because I tend not to favour a ruler. Although I have to say I'm really glad I did use it, and I think in the sort of principle of preciseness, I was quite sort of satisfied with that and happy that I made the decision to use it. I think if I tried to do this freehand, it would have ended up really, really off. So, I don't know if you've guessed what this is yet, but it is, I suppose it must be a hallway wall, maybe. I imagine it to be like a passageway or a hallway in like an old house. So the pattern obviously comes in that bottom panelling, and it is also going to be in the wallpaper, but I wanted to make it a bit more interesting than that. You know, I didn't want just a blank wall of wallpaper because I mean, what even is that? So I put in these cute little wall sconces, and I put this, I didn't know whether it was going to be a picture or a mirror at this point, but that brings me to my next point about Inktober prompts. I am on a limited time frame and I've seen some absolutely gorgeous Inktober works, but I do not have time to spend on something so detailed, and this is probably about as detailed as my prompts are ever going to get, and that is something that I've very much been strict upon myself because I have not enough hours in the day, and if I was to do things that were more complicated, which I'd quite like to do, I literally would get nothing else done. So I felt that this was quite a happy compromise because there is a level of detail in it. But it's not so much as it was going to take me all day to finish it and then not get anything else done. So I'm just taking away some of my pencil lines there, and this is me starting on the actual pattern part. Now the fine liner that I'm using here is a really pale grey one, and it came in a scroller box. I did want the lines on the wallpaper to be noticeable, but I didn't want them to be the main part because it was going to take away from the actual pattern itself. So I was really glad that I had this. If I hadn't had this grey fine liner, I would have watered down some black ink and used a dip pen to draw these lines in instead. That would have been like my second choice. So here's me starting on the actual pattern, and this is the point where I started to get bored because it is very, very repetitive. Now I know some people find it really relaxing to do the same thing over and over because they don't have to think about it and it's not stressful. for some reason, I feel the opposite way about it. And I just think that, oh, why am I still doing this? And it's literally the same shapes over and over. So it was really important for self-discipline for me here to do this and to have this pattern in, you know, as uniform as I could possibly make it. And you could see there I was using the ruler to make sure that everything was lining up. So this is really the sort of boring part of the video, but I just worked my way across and kept going and sketching in this little pattern. And it's nothing complicated and nothing spectacular. I did find that doing the teardrop shapes, I found it easier to do them up and down the way, which is why I've turned my sketchbook round here to do the horizontal one, so I was actually still working vertically. There we go, that's better. So at this point, this is where I decided that was going to be a mirror, because I didn't have time to draw a picture in there either. So the next fine liner that I'm using is another grey one, and it's a slightly darker grey than the previous one. Obviously you can see it stands out a bit more compared to the one that I used to draw the lines. Again, there was a reason for this, and it's because I was going to use the silver Winsor & Newton ink in that actual pattern. So I kind of wanted it to just merge in with the ink, you know, and not really be there as an outline. On to the actual inking now. So as I said, this is the Derwent Inktense palette. So it is ink in a sort of block format, and I absolutely love this little travel set. It does behave differently depending on what paper you're on, and this is an ELO sketchbook. So what I was finding was I was either having to work quickly with it, and one of the reasons I wanted to use the water brushes so that I could have that steady flow of water and I wasn't having to go back and dip into a pot of water. So you either have to do that, or you can pre-wet the sections that you want to colour or ink, and then you can pick the colour up off the palette, excuse me, and add it in. That's fine, but you have less control over where the pigment's actually going, so this is why I chose to use this method. And just wanted to kind of prove a point here about the fact that you don't need a lot of different colours to make things interesting. This wood panelling that's running along the side, I just used different dilutions of that same colour. And you see once you get to more the sort of finished article, but you can see how much you can actually do just by diluting down one type of ink. And I think it's one of the reasons that Inktober is so popular, because you see a lot of drawings that are just done with black ink and they're spectacular. So don't underestimate the power of water, because it can do a lot. And I actually really like this sort of wood panel effect. For these little borders on the actual inset parts, I wanted a really heavy concentration of the ink because I wanted this to be really dark, because I wanted them to kind of like pop out a bit. And I think I've managed to keep it relatively uniform, which, yeah, I'm quite happy with that actually. And the last bit in the background there, I have just watered down the same colour again, as I was saying, and just a really light wash in between all these squares. So that's ended up quite nice, and I'm quite pleased with the aesthetic of it. It's still got that sort of hand-drawn feel. Again, when you're using stuff like this, you're not going to get really smooth, flat colour, and for me, that's not what Inktober is about. So I switched to the darker brown here just for the frame of the mirror. I felt if I used the same brown again, it would look a bit too sort of matchy and samey, and I wanted it to have a kind of sort of old feel to it. So yeah, the dark brown did the trick there. For this mirror, I've mixed a little bit of the blue and a tiny spot of black, and then watered it right down to give me this sort of slate grey type colour, and it's just to show that there was glass there and some sort of reflection. And again, I was quite cautious with that because I didn't want it to be too bright. Moving down to the bottom, this is a lovely plum colour, and I switched to a broad tipped water brush here, and that first coat I felt was just too wishy-washy even for me, and I like really pale desaturated colours, so I just whacked a layer of the neat ink over the top of it while it was still wet. Okay, moving on here, this is a more sort of viridian colour. This is you know, much more my thing. So again, watered that, really watered it down and popped it in between the patterned stripes. Again, I didn't want that to stand out. The things that I was wanting to stand out in the picture was the panelling, because that is a pattern, and that little sort of funny teardroppy type pattern that I've got in the stripes, in the white stripes. So here are our Winsor & Newton inks. I really like these. You've got to give them a really good shake before you start though, or else all the sort of metallic pigment sinks to the bottom. So if you are going to use these, make sure you agitate them before you open up and stick your brush in them. And I'm just using this Paint Neat and a little tiny paintbrush, and worked my way around, and this took me ages because I was having to be so careful because it was such a small area. But I have to say, despite the repetitiveness, I was actually quite satisfied at the shininess and the uniformity of it by the time I was finished. I was surprised, I really liked that. So shift over just a tiny bit of the gold here for the sconces. I could probably have used a smaller brush here. This is a number 1 round, but I managed, it was fine. And I thought I would just add in some studs to the mirror as well, give it a kind of like steampunky feel. That was just a sort of last minute kick, but again, it just makes the picture a wee bit more interesting, and I was kind of having fun with the ink and I wasn't ready to finish it. But yeah, that was that. So I kept that nice and simple, and it's so shiny. So all that was left to do is sign the bottom, and I always put the hashtag for Inktober and the day and what the prompt is. So there you go, there is my finished pattern, and oh, it's shiny, for day 10 of Inktober. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys, or what you have done for pattern, and this may have given you an idea if you haven't done your prompt for today. So I want to thank you very much for watching, and we shall see you on Sunday for another video. Have a good day, everyone, and we'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.